Hi guys, it's Tanker Fox. I'm filming today, or part of today, at Jamestown Settlement. This is the recreation of James Fort. Yes, the site was called Jamestown, but the actual establishment itself, I believe, was called James Fort. So, I'm wearing armor just because it looks cool, and this is what the men, usually the officers, would have worn when they were out with their matchlocks and whatnot. And so, yeah, let's go for a tour. We're entering right now through a side entrance. Seems to be the church. You can see all the prayers written on the walls. You can see the altar where things were done. You can see the priest's chair over here. I don't know what this is for, this little box seat. I believe these could have been for, actually, no, churches were usually used as like a central place to meet. So this could be where during a trial, a judge or a witness/defendant would stand. And then these are the pews where everyone would be sitting. Yeah. Not quite comfortable, I believe. And so this is where all the people in the settlement, or the people watching the trial, would be sitting. There's more prayers and verses on the wall. I think this little thing was for holy water that a priest would have brought along on the voyage. Yeah, it's one of 3 public buildings in James Fort. You can see up there, there's the coat of arms of Great Britain. You can see the unicorn for Scotland and the lion for England. And you got the flag of the Royals up in the middle, surrounded by what I think is the Order of the Garter thingy. Yeah, because this was still belonging to England at the time of its founding. So yeah, this is the church. It's pretty cool. This appears to be an armory of some kind, because you can see helmets similar to what I'm wearing, and armor and chest pieces and whatnot. So, where they would keep their weapons, gunpowder, and muskets. It'd be an important place to defend, and definitely not blow up because of all the gunpowder in here. Seems where things are repaired too. As you can see, a lot of wood, I'd assume to be used to heat furniture or something, to repair any broken equipment. And yeah, what I believe is the armory. So in here is what I believe is the powder magazine. This is where, as you can see, all your barrels of gunpowder would be stored. Also your cannon shot and artillery implements and some other things necessary for operating cannons. I think that's a spare barrel for some sort of gun. I'm not sure. Yes, it's really similar to the other powder magazines I've seen at places like Fort Clinch, where I do a lot of filming. But there's a lot of key differences. One, that it's just that the powder barrels aren't just for specific guns, but it's just loose powder. That all the cannonballs are in here are shot, whether it be bar shot and chain shot, like over here. It's a closer look at it. Used usually to take out masts of ships, as the Spanish and their armada were quite a threat in this time and place. And just regular cannon shot, as in solid shells that would not explode, unlike shell, which was more common during the American Civil War. You still have your standard artillery implements, stuff like the sponge and rammer and the worm, which weren't really changed throughout the ages. And then you have all these implements I do not know. If you do know and you can recognize them, please comment and tell me what they are so I can be more knowledgeable. But yeah, this is one of the places I don't think you'd want being blown up, as well as the armory, because, especially here, if this caught on fire, everything would explode. This is what I believe would be similar to a bastion at James Fort. As you can see, there's all different types of cannon. Actually, maybe howitzers, because of the angles you can move the barrel. So they weren't quite like, as you can see by this one sticking up, they weren't quite like mortars, where they could just only fire like up and down in like an arc or parabola shape, but they weren't quite like cannons either, in which they could actually shoot higher instead of just in a straight line. Pretty cool. This would be a platform, and there were little holes cut out in the walls for cannons to fire. And it wasn't a proper bastion because this isn't a third system fort like Fort Clinch is, but it's just a little wall erected in the shape of a triangle with bastions on the end, or bastion looking things on the end, with a platform for the cannons and just a simple wooden wall all around. Let's go in here, see what we can find. This is the storehouse, and then this is where barrels of supplies and tools and whatnot would be kept. It's pretty fascinating. I don't know what's in any of these, but I'm sure the numbers on there could tell you what might be in there. I'm not sure. I don't even know what they mean. They probably respond to some sort of manifest. This is where I believe someone would be working to check out all the tools and stuff. I'd assume so, because they have a little makeshift desk set up. These would be tools for pretty much everything. Farming, wood cutting, you name it, to keep the fort up and running. And the people inside, they're alive. Also an old-timey wheelbarrow. Yes, it kind of looks like a modern wheelbarrow, I guess, because designs rarely change. More barrels. And yeah, it's cool. I believe this would be a place where would be a small house where the settlers would have lived. As you can see, there's a dude living here because he has the same armor or similar armor as what I have on. And I believe these would be his matchlocks, which was demonstrated in another video of mine, that he would be trained to fire a few rounds, to fire and reload within 20 to 30 seconds. So, wood for the fire, obviously, because that's an important part. Then there's the fireplace itself. Then this would be, would be where they would sleep. It seems there were like one or two men in here. There's what looks to be some kind of shield. I can't tell if that's a pike or a halberd. I think it might be a halberd. More armor. Chainmail for some reason. I mean, this is the 1600s, and so all like medieval Renaissance era things would be being phased out, so I would believe they would use chainmail in some limited capacity. A belt, a bandolier used for storing powder charges and slow matches and gunpowder, I believe. And what I believe is another matchlock tied up here. And then the bed would be really simple. It's a wooden blanket and a straw mattress, which is actually rather comfortable. On top of, laid on top of a few boards and I guess a box or a chest underneath. It's a really small, really simple house, but it had everything you needed. And that was what's important in a settlement like this. Also, it had a little garden plot out back, which is pretty cool because you needed to grow food for yourself. Nice. This is yet another house where more men would sleep. As you can see, more clothes and bandoliers and beds. There's a chamber pot right there. You can assume what that would be used for. And yeah, again, still very simple, but this was important. Survival was the name of the game, not comfort. I believe this is where food would be stored and prepared. As you can see, there's a lot of room for storing some stuff and a lot of room for preparing like really simple things made of what they probably brought with them on the voyage or found here or had preserved. You can see that's what the purpose of these jars and barrels are. No one knows what's in them, but you can probably assume. I guess, and I can assume they only did a lot of cooking based off of just the sheer amount of firewood they kept in here. Shut up, rooster. And more firewood out here, because yeah. Sorry if it doesn't look like I'm that knowledgeable about all this stuff. It's kind of outside of my usual field of study, but it's still really interesting, and I thought y'all would like it too. Also, there's a historically accurate rooster right here. Come on, make a noise. I'm just gonna follow you around until you do something cool. Can't run forever, rooster. Ooh, what appears? Oh, let's check this out.
I can do a nail pretty easy in 30 seconds, but my problem is I cannot do a nail every 30 seconds. So my average day of nail making will be 50 to 80 nails. All right? Part of that is I talk too much. Whereas historically, a blacksmith might do 200 to 300 nails in a day, and nailers are going to do 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 nails a day, depending on the source that we're looking at, right? So like we were saying, Monticello, that was enslaved child labor, doing 1,000 nails a day, and in London, nailers are doing 2,000 to 3,000, right? And yeah, you think about this. Is it important how long it takes to make 10 nails, or is it important how many nails got made in a day?
How many nails got made, I'd assume?
Because you don't get paid, for making 10 nails. You get paid for the day's work.
Cool. So as you can see, this seems to be a blacksmith shop of some kind, where armor similar to stuff I'm wearing would be repaired, and it seems tools and nails would be built and repaired. There's a lot of Latin writing on the walls. As you can see over there, the ferrum, that's the Latin word for iron. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, as the gentleman talked about, they would make as many nails as they could in a day, and they got paid for the day's work. Another bastion type thing, platform for cannons, and these are just holding the barrels. And there's that dang rooster again. Finally, I got him on camera. And yeah, same thing as I talked about with the other bastion. This was, again, one of the three. It was triangle shaped, because apparently the triangles are really strong shape to defend. And yeah, pretty cool. I can only assume a carpenter would work here based on the sheer amount of wood and all of the woodworking tools and wood shavings over there, which is pretty cool. Because as you can tell, over here, the fort's walls are made of wood, and most of the building would be. Even though it looks like they're made of clay, there would probably be this old medieval construction method called wattle and daub, where it would be walls made of wood, and then kind of like an inner wall weaved out of twigs and then plastered over with clay and mud and whatever. Yeah, pretty cool. And so, yeah, let's see what else we can find. Oh, this is a nice house. This seems to be where, I guess, richer people on the voyage would have lived. Again, you're trying to cram as many people as possible into this because the settlement's really small. But as you can tell, the beds are much nicer, even though I'd also assume they'd be straw mattresses or maybe filled with feathers of some kind. More armor, obviously, because every man was trained as a soldier. Because this was a private venture and there was no real army to fortify them with their shield. But I'd assume these would be of higher quality. There's a writing desk and a candle. And a way nicer fireplace. Moving into the other rooms here. It seems there was a second floor used, I'd assume, for storage or other people sleeping up there. A nice dining room, I'd assume. As you can tell, nicer equipment, like a painted shield, and really, really fancy halberds. a nice high back chair. This for the master of the house. That was not a Les Mis reference. Nice fireplace. I mean, a really nice fireplace, and nice candlesticks, assumed probably to be made out of pewter or silver or whatnot. But yeah, it's a nice place. Yeah, see, this is what I was talking about with wattle and daub construction. This is what the walls would look like inside of this thing. It would be put up with sticks and supports and stuff, and then thin strips of it would be weaved between them, forming a wall. And then I guess for insulation or whatnot, the walls, as you can see over here, these little walls would be plastered over with mud or clay or whatnot. And we got another little armory over there, or another little house where people would live in. And another cannon howitzer, I believe, out front. And again, a little plot to grow plants so that the settlement could have food, or you could have food. Basically the same. Again, another nice room. This is even nicer because this is a fancy bed with posts on it, and only one man slept in here. I don't know who would. Probably the captain or whatnot, or someone really, really important. Chamber pot, of course, by the bed. Very nice writing desk and a very nice high back chair, with actually a soft cushion, not filled with straw or anything, filled with feathers, I believe. It had a tablecloth made of what looks like a rug. And yeah, this is genuinely a nice room for the time. Like, you'd have to be rich to live in something like this. A nice chest, really ornate carvings, and yeah. So, ready when you are.
So today I am displaying a surgeon's case. These are reproductions of the kinds of medical instruments the surgeons would have brought with them to Jamestown. So for example, you had a patient who got shot. The surgeon would need a probe to locate the bullet, and then a pair of forceps to reach in and extract it. But if the bullet gets lodged in bone, you'll need a carabellum to bore a hole into the bullet so you can pull it out of the bone.
Interesting. They look similar to things I've seen in other eras. Is there any reason why? Or
I mean, there's only so many ways to perform some of these procedures. But, you know, a lot of these instruments, they go way back.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And so, as that gentleman was saying, that was the governor's palace back there. And even though he was a surgeon in there, that's not necessarily where a surgeon would have lived at the time. They probably would have lived in one of the simple houses I've seen, or maybe something even slightly nicer, because surgeons who came were usually, at the time, learned men who had skills and who had skills, a trade, and probably an education as well. And with that, I believe this concludes my little video tour, because there's not many other buildings here to explore, and I'm getting really hot, and I feel like I'm getting cooked in this armor. Which I don't think, and I'm not wearing wool-based clothes like they would have been wearing, with like the whole cotton linen undershirts and whatnot, and just the metal armor on top of this. I'm just wearing the metal armor, and even then it's hot. So yes, it's rather interesting just to know how people lived at the time, despite how, I mean, terrible some of the things the colonists and settlers did to native populations was terrible, and we shouldn't forget that. But I think it's honestly fascinating just to see how they were not necessarily trying to live here in a new land, but also trying to survive, because they didn't know, they really didn't know a lot of things about this place. And so they were just trying to survive from what they had and what they were used to in England, and trying to recreate that, but with, of course, obvious modifications for their defense and whatnot. So yeah, interesting stuff. And with that, Tanker Fox out.